Kat, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Louis.
So good to have you. I was like thinking to myself, I love Kat. She's just always off doing her thing, and it always looks like life is an adventure for you. And I know that when I'm, watching your videos online, I can rely on seeing you having progressed in something, enjoying yourself, like life's just such an adventure for you. And I'm like, I love that.
Thanks, Louis. There's a lot of rest days that definitely aren't published into the world and a lot of down days, but a lot of progress. So, yeah, and I like sharing that with everyone because we don't always have achievements to celebrate. We have a lot of progress on the way.
Yeah. What do your rest days look like?
Honestly, I'm having one today. I woke up this morning and went, my muscles are exhausted and my social batteries are pretty exhausted. So, what did I do? I slept in, or I tried to. I'm in a very lucky situation right now. I'm staying in a friend's place and it's stunning. Like, I look outside these glass doors that I have here, and it's just views of the mountainside and the jungle and a waterfall. It's amazing. I wake up to the birds chirping, sometimes a little too loudly in the mornings.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of beautiful natural stuff. I don't know if you can hear them right now, actually. They're never quite quiet.
I can't hear them, but it sounds like you're in a palace. It's a little echoey, and it's like that's definitely like a palace sound.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. This is the palace. I'm feeling very, very lucky.
Palace-like. Yeah, it looks good. It looks good.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. But yeah, so my rest day was sleeping in, having a very chill breakfast, reading a book. I don't rest very well, so I studied for a bit. I wasn't fully resting. And now I get to chat to you, and I think I'll just read my book and have dinner after this. So very, very quiet, not a lot of movement, not a lot of interaction.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. On the way here to where I'm recording today, I was listening to our last episode together, and
Oh, yeah?
I was like, what did we talk about last time? Maybe let's not try and cover the same territory. Not that, it's not worth covering twice, but yeah, I had a few chuckles on the way in. Let's just put it that way. I think a memorable moment for me from the last episode was you advising me to go to a pole dancing class or something and not tell them that I was there. Yeah, I definitely laughed out
Good?
loud. No,
Not yet.
not yet.
Keyword.
Not yet. Not yet. Exactly. But that was about a year and a half ago-ish. And at the end of the episode, I said, well, let's not let it be another 2 years before we chat again. But yeah, I guess the reason I wanted to catch up with you is because you're always really insightful. You're full of bits and pieces of wisdom from your own life journey, which is far from linear and full of comedy and trial and error. And so, yeah, you definitely make me feel that humility is totally fine in life, and you have it in spades. And when I'm talking with you, I feel like I'm wrapped around with a nice warm blanket of someone that's making me feel like it's okay to suck at times.
We've all been there. Yeah, that's. I'm glad I'm delivering on that.
Yeah. The other bit was the fact that your parents tried to sign you up to tennis classes to try and fix your coordination, and you ended up running laps the whole time. That just made me laugh. But yeah, I wanted you to bring us up to speed on what have you been up to the last 18 months since we last spoke.
Ah, goodness. In a nutshell, I took a year off to explore a life in the circus.
Wait, you took a whole year off?
Yeah. Yeah, 13 months and counting, but I'll be going back to work next month, actually.
Holy crap, that's awesome.
Yeah, I recommend it to anyone who has the opportunity and the setup to be able to do it. But I highly recommend doing it with a couple of goals in mind, because otherwise you just end up very, very aimless or bored with the time off. So yeah, I took my year off with a couple of goals in mind. I wanted to explore the artistic side of circus and see if being a performing artist is something that I would like to do more seriously. And I wanted to explore more the business side of it, if I wanted to run a school or something like that, whether I could do that in a way that suits the lifestyle I imagine for myself in the future, but also, indulge in the passion that I have for teaching and for aerials. I'm trying to tie together all these pieces. We can talk more about a concept called ikigai, which is around, finding your life purpose through
I'm looking at the
all the
book right
different.
now.
You are.
Yeah.
There you go.
So last time it was that we both read *Sapiens* during the pandemic,
Yeah.
and now you're talking
Uh,
about *Ikigai*, a book that I'm reading one page a day of.
One page a day is a nice commitment, just a little bit at the time.
Just like, there's the 5 minutes that I have. But yeah.
Well, you probably know more about it than me now.
Oh, really? Are
But
you reading less than one page a day?
I haven't read the book, actually. The company I worked and will work for again, they run a bunch of private schools for the middle class. So it's like high quality education at affordable prices. But one of the ways that they do that is by basing it around Ikigai. So it's not like we're trying to educate these students to know how to do maths and write with perfect Spanish or whatever. It's more about helping them find their life purpose and being happy and being satisfied and everything. So Ikigai plays a really important part in that. And that's how I actually learned about it at a very superficial level. But yeah, it's right now, I guess it's trying to tie together, there are things that I'm passionate about, there's things that I'm good at, and there's things that will give me money. And I'm not necessarily sure if I can tie those all together, but I'm working on it still.
Still.
Being a
Still
keyword
being
right
the
now.
key word.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. So
anyone that goes back to listen to our last episode, and it's episode 12, you're talking about the same thing, trying to find that purpose, that hopefully ticks all of the boxes. And damn, I mean, like, really? You just took a year off. You ran away, joined the circus. You're living a lot of people's dream. Just want you to know that.
I think I've had a lot of great opportunities, among others being the financial stability to be able to take a year off. But I wouldn't say I ran away. I actually was very excited to stay in one spot last year, and managed to do that for most of the year so that I could really focus on these two goals and try to give them the breathing space to see if they could be a reality. So yeah, I was lucky in my timing as well. I got to join an artistic residency at the beginning of my sabbatical year. That was incredibly informative. I didn't realize there is so much that goes into performing on stage, whether it's circus or dance or theater. But that process taught me a whole lot. I have a lot of gratitude for the mentors who ran that. And it showed me, I really enjoyed it, but I don't think I'm passionate enough to pursue it in the way that I think you have to be really dedicated to the arts, because it is a competitive and it's a tough field. And I think you truly have to love it if you're going to fight your way through what can be a very frustrating process at times. That's probably true of almost any endeavor that we can do in life, but I think that's especially true of the arts. Probably just a little underappreciated in this day and age. So that was. You look like you're going to say something.
No, you're just making me think about the general ways in which I walk and move around the world. And yeah, the arts are super important to me, and I think they're super important to everyone. Like, you walk around where I'm based, Melbourne City, during the pandemic, and it's a ghost town, and it's eerie, and it's weird, and it's just concrete and glass, and there's nothing attractive about a city. What fills it with life is people, and even more so, it's the artists. It's that painting that you see on the wall. It's the buskers. And lately I've been making more of a conscious effort to whip out whatever money I have in my wallet and throw it in the buskers, case, guitar case, or whatever it might be, out of that appreciation for the arts. And the arts have to be accessible. Firstly, they have to be visible. Secondly, in my opinion, but not so much so that they're taken for granted.
Yeah, I think those are all very fair statements. Something as well that was brought to my attention recently, a friend of mine is a music producer and was talking about like the costs of touring and the cost of taking a band around. And the fact is, all of that stuff is, as everyone knows, there's a lot of inflation going around and everything is getting more expensive. But I realized even I had the same cost in my mind of a concert ticket. When I was growing up as a teenager, I thought, $40, $60, maybe 80 or 100 for a really popular band is what I would pay for a concert. And those prices actually haven't changed very much for tickets, but all the costs underneath, they have continued to go up and up and up and up. He sent me an article about Taylor Swift's tour being a real record breaker and everyone thinking, oh yeah, touring is earning heaps of money, but that's just not the reality for the majority of bands and artists out there. Same thing with museums. We still expect museum entry for, I don't know, maybe $8, $10. If we're lucky, some of them are free, but that doesn't change the fact that their people costs and every other costs are going up as well. So it's a bit of a reminder, even to myself, to be willing as well to pay a little bit more for art, because it is important. It does inspire us in different ways. It helps us learn things in ways that we might not get out of our own life experiences. And it's hard to remember that kind of value when day to day we're thinking about different things. We're usually in a different context and we're not fully conscious of what art might do for us. I say this as a completely uncultured heathen who often doesn't go to museums and things, and I still think art is worthwhile in my life. So
Yeah. I mean, you can't do all the things, but I mean, whatever it is that you can do or learn or appreciate that gives you that appreciation, I suppose. And for you, it's circus. And, you invest a lot of time in it. That's probably giving you more of an appreciation than just being at your job. I'm sure. Maybe I haven't woken up yet. I had a coffee and I drank it way too fast.
now, what time is it in Melbourne right now? It's early in the morning,
It's
right?
9:30 in the morning. No, I wouldn't call it early.
Okay.
It's mid-morning.
Not quite early.
Yeah. For a Saturday, yeah.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, waking up early on a weekend is still a sacrifice. so.
Honestly, if it's getting to talk to you, then it's totally worth it.
Thanks for waking up early for me.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's really good to be here, and it sounds like your progress hasn't stopped. You took the 13 months off, and you're learning a lot about yourself and about life.
Yeah. So that was the artistic side of things, but I think the big change in direction or confirmation of direction for me, I guess, was looking at the aerial school. And honestly, I needed a little shove in that direction. It's a very long story, but I very nearly bought a studio back in Australia, which for me was a wild change of plans because I really love Colombia and I really love living there and look forward to do that for the foreseeable future. And obviously, buying a business in Australia would involve coming back to Australia.
Yeah.
But that whole whirlwind of, I guess, questioning and business planning and financial things and whatever made me realize that I'm really excited to do an aerial school. Like, we would talk about the hardest tasks that we'd have to do, cleaning out the entire warehouse we were thinking was going to take a couple of days and a whole lot of manual labor with not a lot of thanks for it. And I was excited about it. So that, pointed out to me that I really want to be doing this. I started teaching again. I was teaching back in Australia for a few years and then took a break when I moved to Colombia. But in the last 6 months, I've started teaching again here. And it's just been so wonderful to have these adult students. I think some of the oldest that I'm teaching are in their 40s, reaching 50s. And the youngest I've taught here, well, I'm teaching kids actually now who are, 6 to 8 years old as well. And it's so cool to see this whole range of ages discover that they're capable of doing new things. It's so nice to have that process back in my life again. So I'm still, working out the nuts and bolts of how to open up my own space that will be profitable because I would really like I would like a minimum standard of life, I guess, that isn't always easy to get in the circus world, but I'm really excited about it. So that's, when I come back to work next month, I've asked to go part-time so I can maintain some focus on both continuing to teach and also building out this new business. So that's what my current future holds in store.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge update. This is one of those key milestones where you're like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to take the steps in order to do it. And, that's it. It's the fork in the road and you finally got there. That's massive. It's daunting, I'm sure, but massive.
It's more that it's taken 5 years, I think, to confirm this step on the road. I get a lot of people who ask or make statements like, oh, it's really brave and really risky that you're doing this thing. Like, how did you take this big step in your life? And I'm like, because I took a lot of tiny little steps and it took me a really long time to convince myself that this was a good idea. So I'd say this has been 5 years in the making.
Yeah.
But now I'm pretty certain that I want to make this happen. So
Yeah, it's like at the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Everyone sees that you've taken this enormous brave step full of courage and risk. But behind it all, we're chipping away. This seed was planted a long time ago. From the moment that you started doing circus arts, that's probably when it started. And then you realized that you enjoyed it. And as you put it in our last episode, it became like your meditation. You've been able to use it to be present, be out of the work environment, be learning, growing, be pushing yourself physically. I saw that someone recently commented that you look like a ballerina or a dancer, which is huge compliment, I'm sure. Actually, I saw you dancing and you're pretty good, actually. Pretty good,
Thank you. I'm having a really hard time now convincing people that I really, really, really was quite uncoordinated 10 years ago. And that is still the majority of my life that I have been uncoordinated for. And it's only the recent past in which I think I have to take back that definition of myself.
You have to scrub that one out. Was uncoordinated, not is.
Exactly. No longer.
Yeah. Formerly uncoordinated. Yeah, you did this thing where I think you were laying on your back, but then you sort of like lifted yourself up by your shoulders and sort of flipped over
Yeah.
and then kind of did a push-up. And I was like, how? That's usually something that someone does by accident.
Thanks to some really good teachers. Sometimes it's things I'm doing by accident, though.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't claim that anymore. It's all intentional.
Well, I did walk into a rock the other day, so I know that I'm fully less uncoordinated, but getting there. Definitely, I'm human is what I am.
Yeah, bringing you back down to earth where you belong. But no, I think it's a huge step. And like you said, you've been little baby steps that have taken you there. And for me, it's really exciting to hear that you're doing this. I'm just, it's a moment of self-reflection. I've been doing the podcast for 5 years now, by the way.
5 years.
Yeah.
It adds up quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's 5 years. Well, I dropped it for like 2 years, and then last year I dropped it for like 6 months. So it's been on and off, just having a look at my own journey through it. I can really relate to some of the things that you're saying, small incremental steps, persistence, eventuate into that feeling that you get one morning where you wake up and it's a part of your life that you can't let go. Because if things aren't moving forwards, they're sort of going backwards, right? And so you eventually wake up and think, I have to intentionally now push this thing forward because I love it so much and it's become such a part of my life that I don't want to let it go backwards. I don't want to drop this anymore. That's how I think about things anyway.
I mean, it's an interesting idea. I think it might depend on the context. But I think my haunches get raised by the idea of we constantly have to push things forward and we constantly, have to make things better or whatever. Because one, I think there's like a natural limit to many of these things. In my field, part of that is around age. I've spent a lot of time in the last year talking about the fact that I want to be doing what I'm doing at, 60, 70 years of age. And I have great examples in my life of people who are around that age and are still doing badass circus things. But the way in which you do it has to be different. The tricks might not be the same tricks that you were doing when you were 20 or 30 years old. And so I guess it keeps me mindful that I might not always want to push for bigger and better in the things that I'm doing. I might just want to maintain it, but I think you can do maintenance in a way where things are still new and interesting, where it's still, I don't know, for an example right now, I think I could stay at the same level of tricks that I'm doing and just focus on how to make better transitions. I was teaching a bit of a trick to someone who is not an aerialist the other day, but she's a professional dancer. And even though she didn't really execute the trick properly, she looked incredible doing it. Because she just has these instincts in her body for what good lines look like and everything. I'm like, I have so much that I could learn there. So I don't have to be stronger for that, but I do still have to practice at it. And it is such an interesting process. So in that way, okay, maybe it's still doing something that's different and that's a challenge, but it's also not necessarily bigger and better. Maybe you could call that pushing it forward as well. I guess it's trying to take away that expectation that it has to be an improvement on what's gone before.
Sure. I think it's a good call out, but yet personally, I gain motivation from having something to strive for or to be accountable to. And I think we were talking off air before about accountability is a huge thing for me. And I think of the phases of motivation and accountability. Right. It's like at first you wake up and you go and watch Netflix all day and you do nothing. Then you come up with a good idea to do something that you might enjoy. Then you get started on that journey. Then the next day you can come back and go and watch Netflix and go, oh, that was fun. Or you can go, actually, I enjoyed that. I'm going to do it again. And it's in that process of doing it again that you might get a little bit better, or you might learn something new. And then you realize that the progress and the joy and fulfillment and the things that come out of it, the learnings, are all based on accountability and discipline. Like being accountable to the thing that you bought all this equipment to do, or that that you paid this membership for this studio to show up for the year. Right? Being accountable to your past self for making those decisions. Being disciplined enough today to show up and continue to be there. And then beyond that, it's like, wow, look how much I've learned, and look how much I've grown, and look how much, how you can do that role now and not make it look like an accident. And look how many great conversations I've had in the past 2 years, and how much joy and fulfillment that I've gotten out of that. And at some point there comes a striving to want more, to go, I like this. This is going well. Let's do more of it. And so from that Netflix version of yourself, the couch potato, to the person that you are when you're motivated based on accountability and discipline, having been sustained for an extended period of time. For me, it sounds like that's where you're at. For me, it's definitely where I'm at. And there's also, I dropped it for a while, and I realized that I've just missed it too much, like it's too good a part of my life to let go.
I love that so much. And I had asked you before, how are you feeling? And so I want to come right back to that. Just like bouncing off what you're talking about there is, I completely agree with all of that. I think the phases of life is something I've been learning to ride, to accept that it's okay sometimes that I, step back a little bit from the things that I'm driving forward. Sometimes we need a little bit of a break. Sometimes we need a rest day, or a rest 6 months, or a rest year. Or rest a little bit longer. But I have a lot of faith in that. Like, if you have things that you really love, you get that itch to come back again. And that can be a really fun process too. Is I've had a lot of students come back or start learning with me for the first time, but they haven't done aerials for a number of years. They've taken a really big gap, and they're coming back and they're rebuilding all of the strength all over again. And they're having to, it's frustrating sometimes, because it's like, if I hadn't stopped, gosh, I could be so much further ahead right now. But there's also a lot of joy in learning new movements. And it's also really fun trying to figure out how to make it interesting for them, instead of teaching them the same things that they learned, 5 or 10 years ago. And it's also just being okay with ourselves that we're human. And sometimes we need to get bored. Sometimes we need to realize what our life looks like without the things that we love in it, to realize how important it is to keep them there. And that gives us all the more drive to put it back in again later. So it sounds like you've been through some of that over the last year. So yeah, with that, I want to hear how you're feeling now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I went through a pretty dark patch, and maybe I realized about myself that maybe I lack the ability to cope with adversity or a stress in the ways in which maybe others have been able to develop. Or, it's probably a realization that I've had more recently, that I decided to completely go off the rails because I wasn't able to cope with stress, and I didn't know where to go or how to address these feelings. And so I went clubbing for about 8 months. And honestly, it was a pretty brutal phase, because it involved a lot of alcohol consumption, drug use, late nights, and all of the things that are associated with that, and the repercussions. And I was really making a mess of myself. I was like self-sabotaging. And so I got to a point actually where I was like, damn, this is going pretty bad. Like, this is going really south very quickly, and if I'm intending on this, then it's working. And then I'm still back at square one. Like, none of what I was doing to try and cope was actually helping in any way. And so 8 months later, I'm very, very fatigued from being constantly hungover, continuing to show up to work, actually doing some decent work as well, somehow functioning. And I was just done. I was done with my own bullshit. And then I realized I still don't have the support that I need. Like, there's no one that's going to rescue me out of this either. Like, if I was looking for help or if I was needing help and support through just like life stresses and some of the challenges that I was facing before, I didn't get it by going through this phase. So yeah, the realization hit, and it's probably another thing to come clean that I've had challenges with mental health for as long as I can remember, and without having labeled it that or known that that was a label, it's a much more prevalent label now, mental health is, but I can go all the way back to childhood where I felt lost and confused and alone at times, despite my family's best efforts. And so I'm like, dude, this is nothing new. Like, this is your normal. This is your baseline is feelings of helplessness and feeling alone and feeling overwhelmed. Like, this is your baseline. You got to learn how to deal with this somehow. And that doesn't involve escapism. And so taking a step away from alcohol. So today's 7 weeks yesterday.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Sean Collier also congratulated me, I think, when I was at 4 weeks or something like that.
Yeah. Any amount of time at that commitment is a challenge.
Yeah, totally. And then there's other, vices that I had as well that I've been off for a period of weeks as well. Alcohol's been the longest. And so I'm feeling like there's a way forward by correlating the accountability and discipline, showing up for my guests and continuing to have these great conversations that other people that I don't even know or meet in other parts of the world find value in listening to. And if I can correlate the lack of going off the rails with the progress that I'm making with these beautiful conversations that I get to have with amazing people like yourself, then maybe that is a healthy way of dealing with it for now. Maybe not forever, but for now, it's something that can steady the ship. And at this stage in my life, I'm getting close to 40. You're just entering your 30s. And I feel like I learn a lot from you. So again, like I said in our last episode, not that age has anything to do with it, but getting close to my 40s, for me, there's been a lot of escapism, a lot of running towards the things that were fun and easy in the past. But now more than ever, I'm finding virtue and real genuine growth in the discipline. So I haven't missed a cold shower, for example, since the 20th of June last year. And in Australia, June's winter. Right. And now we're getting back into winter. So we're nearly a full year that I haven't missed a cold shower. Right. And for me, I didn't know that I was going to get joy from looking at that streak. I didn't know that I was going to feel so empowered. And now I'm adding layers to that empowerment and that stoic virtue that I feel within. It's being off the booze, being off other vices, continuing this streak of cold showers. And now I put on top being very disciplined with something that I enjoy. This has been the most productive month ever in the history of the podcast with like 9 episodes or something recorded. So things are working basically, Kat. And how do I feel now? I feel great because I can see that the accountability and the discipline of showing up for myself is leading to positive progress. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But it's bloody
That's
hard,
awesome.
Sometimes you just need a hug.
Yeah, I'm sending you one virtually from here.
Thanks.
I mean,
yeah.
we should normalize asking people for hugs and receiving them. They say that you need somewhere in science, it says that if you get like a hug for 7 seconds or something, it releases one of the happy hormones. 7 seconds is a long time to hug someone, and I don't think we do that enough. But I mean, that goes with what I wanted to really like congratulate you on, because a lot of the changes you've been making is based on like intrinsic motivation. It's you having to pull yourself out of, the more comfortable or the easier routes that you could go down in life. It's you having to commit to some harder habits, which take more effort, even though they have longer payoff. And we know that that's good for us, but like we are wired as humans, like our brains are wired to love the short-term payoff, not the long-term.
Hello. Hence the 5-pack of donuts from the Queen Victoria Market earlier today. One
Delicious.
vice.
Oh, I want one of those.
Yeah, this is one vice I ain't ditching anytime soon.
Everything in moderation, Louis. Everything in moderation. You gotta.
I think 5 at a
have
time is
something
moderation.
Yeah.
Once a week.
No, that's exactly it. Indulgence is moderation too. I had a bowl full of chocolate chips today. we gotta live an enjoyable life as well, you know, and we need to indulge sometimes to make that happen. Yeah, a life without indulgence, I think, would be a life, maybe a very harsh one to live. But look, like that's all stuff that you had to do for yourself, and I think that's the hardest thing. What we had spent a lot of time talking about last, gosh, I can't believe it's more than a year, but was community, and we've touched in a little bit by text over the last year about that as well. Because yeah, I've been thinking of you a lot actually, and like the struggle that I think not just you, but like a lot of men in particular right now are having to find other people that they can be close with, but especially other men, because we tend to be, you know, more friends with our own gender than the other, where you can be fully open and emotionally aware and emotionally received and all those things, where you can ask for a hug and get a hug back. And so, like, firstly, I'm proud of you for having made it this far with a lot of efforts that you have to do for yourself one way or another. But I'm also curious, yeah, how it's been going with finding a community to help, you know, support through all of that and hopefully sustain as well.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a good question, and yeah, you've been so supportive. You know, you make great suggestions, and you know, one of your great suggestions, which has been echoed by even counselors in the past, was to find a community. And I think you actually. You know what? Let's just take a pause here. You encouraged me to join Hash House Harry's. And to remind everyone that hasn't listened to our last episode, how do they describe themselves?
A drinking group with a running problem.
Yeah. You were like, why don't you join them? And I was like, listen, Kat, that won't end well for me. I won't do any running.
The one I'm in does have alcohol-free beers
Okay.
for those who don't drink alcohol. But yeah, I can see how that would be a bit of a challenge.
Potentially dangerous. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I feel like, you know, finding community has always been an interesting challenge for me, you know, and I guess it's because in my nature and because of the way I was brought up as well, I have learned how to find purpose and meaning in solitary creative pursuits. So when I was younger, my mum started this business where she would create these ceramic lanterns based on the ranchos of Venezuela, and she was inspired by something she saw back there, and she started making them here, and I would paint them. And soon enough, they became pretty popular, and Mum was able to quit her job and, you know, do it as a business, but it meant that we were doing a lot of painting. And I would spend my whole weekends from the age of like 13 to about 16 painting lanterns. I didn't go and hang out with my buddies. I didn't play sports. I painted for our family business, and I showed up to markets and helped pack the car and unpack the car and stand there and talk to adults all day and sell lanterns to them and stuff. And so that having been a big part of my upbringing, the muscles that I developed through that period in my life were more around how to be productive in your time off. While everyone else was out having fun with their buddies, I was, you know, trying to do my best to help around the house. So once you've spent that many years of your foundational, you know, adulthood flexing that muscle, it's really hard to undo it, you know. So that's sort of maybe context around why I find it a little bit harder to engage with communities, is because I'm kind of addicted to this need to be productive all the time, which is weird, but it can be a strength and a weakness. Okay, so I try and look at it as a virtue and not something that detracts from my life. But then, you know, I feel as though going and hanging out with people and just talking for the sake of it doesn't maybe fulfill me as much as doing something like this. And what I realized when I was working on Chocolate Dreams, my children's book, was that, hey, listen, this has been fun, but I'm just talking to 3 and 4 year olds. You know, I'm not getting a lot of joy out of this, you know, or I'm not getting a lot of satisfaction out of this. Then I found my skateboarding lessons, which we talked about last time, and I was like, oh, cool, yeah, I get to teach people something that I really enjoy and meet more grown-ups in the process and have these great conversations, which eventually led into the podcast, where the motivations from some of these great guests from my skate lessons and their travel stories sort of led into me wanting to record people's stories and stuff. So, you know, this is my community. This is my therapy. This is my way of continuing to utilize a strength or a muscle that I developed as a young teenager and continue on that trajectory of using my weekends to do something that I felt was productive. And maybe that's sad. Maybe people will look at it and go, gee, that's really sad. But hey, listen, I didn't grow up going to the footy club on the weekend and hanging out with the guys. I didn't. As much as I wanted to, as much as I dreamed sometimes that I could just go and play sports and get beat up and like have a laugh with my buddies in the change rooms afterwards. I just didn't have it. So recently I just released an episode with 4 other guys. And for me, it was like going out to the countryside with 4 guys who are so ramshackle and far from perfect and just so genuine. You know, for me, it was a great way of being able to rediscover boyhood, but also I got to pull out the mics and do something productive as well and turn it into a conversation that I'll get to relive time and time again. And so, yeah, maybe the podcast will give me the balance of community and
Yeah. I was going to say, like, far from sad, I actually think that's really clever that you're using something that both gives you like accountability, but also joy. And also, you figured out how to get a double whammy of community with that. I mean, that's pretty clever.
I'm all about killing 2 birds with 1 stone, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, how very efficient of you. I mean, there are elements of your story that really resonate with me as well around, we're both, coming from immigrant families where, there's that immigrant mentality of like, you have to work hard for a better life. And I understand that need for productivity coming from a very young age. Like when you're maybe part of the child labor that goes into running the family convenience store. I have no complaints about that because I think that that has given me a lot of great habits in life. And I really respect people who come from a similar mentality and know that good things are not just handed to you. Hard work is important, and like taking the initiative to get things done, all of that stuff is important. And I think those are virtues. I think there are problems on the other end of the spectrum that we're trying to undo now, like this endless need to be productive and this endless need for things to pay off. But yeah, everything comes with its good and its bad. But also in a similar way to you, although maybe we are taking different paths on it, but my approach to community has also had to evolve over the last 10, 20 years. We might have talked about it this last time as well. I am naturally an introvert. I've never really thought that I needed a community to support me. And I've had the luck of having some amazing friends who, even if I don't talk to them for like 5 years, when we see each other again, it's like, coming back to you, Louis, after a year and a half, and we're still chatting and it's still a flow. And we don't know every detail that's passed in the last year and a half. And I think that's a beautiful thing, but it definitely made me a bit lazy when it came to friendships. I think that the last couple of years, I've told you before about this amazing group of women that I found in Bogota who've been my rocks.
I wanted to ask about them.
Yeah. Any specific questions? I might answer it as we go.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're going to answer it as we go. I was just like, yeah, that was on my list. To be like, how are those women going?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
They're excellent. They're wonderful human beings. And I think I love how you describe the group of guys you were hanging out with as like ramshackle, like far from perfect. I love all these women and I respect every one of them and they are all teaching me different things, but we're all far from perfect. And that's part of the fun. We always joke about having cheap therapy because we're always sharing our problems with each other and
Yeah.
not paying for each other's services as therapists.
Totally. What are friends for if not that?
Right. And I guess that's something that, like, having not tried to invest so much in having a close group that I would talk to every week about, it's not even every week, but much more regularly about what's going on in my life. I guess these last few years with them has made me realize what a difference that makes. I think I had gotten to a point maybe 6 or 7 years ago after a big breakup where I realized I don't know who I'm supposed to turn to right now. I am completely heartbroken and devastated, and I don't know if I pick up the phone, who am I going to call about this? Who's going to let me like vent to them? Who's going to be that shoulder to lean on? I have no idea. And today I feel so lucky that I'm like, there's at least 6 or 7 people in Bogota alone, but I also have more people around the world that I'm like, I've put more effort into understanding and knowing what this friendship is. And I know that those people, like, if I needed it, they're there for that conversation as well, not just for the good and the fun and the happy times and the times when we're in the same city and catching up and everything. So that's made a huge difference for me. And I guess that's the one thing I guess I would challenge you on while you're continuing this evolution of how you look at community and how you bring that into your life. Like, I think these conversations are amazing and I think they're so much fun to listen to. I was listening to the chat that you had with an old friend of mine, Sivas, and I listened to a good half of the one that you had with the boys as well.
Yeah, that was long.
Yeah. Yeah, so I hear the joy in it, and it makes me laugh as well, and some of it makes me think as well, and I love that you are sharing that with the world. But I also question you in those moments of personal individual challenge when you're just like, oh, there's a little thing that happened in my day, not even challenge, but just when something silly happens, like the trams were late for some ridiculous reason and it made you laugh, and you're like, who do I share this with? Yeah, who, I guess, yeah, have you found those people? And there's no pressure to find that right now, but
Yeah.
just something to think about.
Yeah, I talk a lot of shit with people around the office, and I have no problem with, just chatting and just, talking about those little mundane bits and pieces of life and the funny little, truisms and coincidences and things that happen in your day to day with just people in the kitchen, at the office or, on the tram. This elderly Chinese man and I, he was looking at my backpack before, my 70-liter backpack, and it happens to be the same shape as his little market trolley. And I pointed to mine and gone, oh, look, yours and I are similar. And he starts laughing and I start laughing. And, it's, these interactions, I definitely don't lack them. But where can I turn to, like you, to, if I went through another heartbreak? Yeah, it's a good question. I think back to the first time that I was properly devastated after leaving my daughter with her mum in Queensland and sort of the end of that relationship. When I was hanging out with some buddies then, I would spontaneously just like combust in tears and sadness. Like while we were out at a bar or celebrating a birthday or something. People just didn't know what to do. I wasn't the funny guy that they were used to hanging around with in that moment. And so it got really awkward. And then I was like, I should just leave, because, here I am crying and no one can even put their arm around me. Everyone's kind of just looking at each other going, what do we do here? So yeah, for me, it became an interesting journey of realizing, oh crap, like the people that you think are your friends are not necessarily the ones who are going to be there for you when the chips are down. And so, I closed myself off a little bit to the possibility of finding really good, deep, meaningful friendships with too many people, because I was like, damn, I got to be selective here around who I can rely on. And the facts of it are that I have a couple of really good friends, some people I really like and really admire and have been in my life for quite some time. One of them lives in Canberra, the other one lives in Byron Bay. And for me to break through to the threshold of friendship where those two are at, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of resilience on someone else's part. I test people. I test their loyalty, and I do it in unhealthy ways at times in order to figure out, are you going to be there for me when the chips are really down? I'm going to fucking test you out right now with some brutal truths, to see if you can handle it. Because I want to know if next time I'm feeling run over by the bus, that I can rely on you. And honestly, there's not many people that can handle the level of shit that I get to, like the level of lows, the depths of despair that I reach. And so I've had to learn other ways of managing it. And I'm managing it through discipline and accountability. That's the only way. And look, you know what the other thing is? I started going to church. And I'm not a big Christian or anything, although I grew up in like a Christian, I was born Catholic, I suppose. I grew up in a Christian household. But I got, at the end of that, like that last weekend that I went out and had a big drink and woke up feeling so terrible about myself, I was like, holy shit, Kat's right. I need a community. I need a body of other humans that I'm accountable to. So what I did is I started going to church on Sundays, 9 o'clock in the morning. I just Googled church. I showed up to this church. Turns out to be a really good one, where people were pretty chill. And the sermon was about, making sure that you create space in your life for when things don't go right, maybe for yourself or others. And it was like, oh, I really resonate with that message a lot. And that was actually a nice experience. And there's all these other people here that are here not only to serve themselves, but their community. And in that respect, maybe I can get around this whole church thing. Maybe if I don't go out on Saturday night and I plan to go to church on Sunday morning and just be in a room full of people that intend to be the best versions of themselves or show up for their community, maybe there I can find some kind of something that I can grasp onto that feels like community. And while I was in that space, they were talking about a lot of the groups that they set up for people to hang out with. And they're like, oh yeah, we've got this group, and look, all our groups are different. And there are groups where like men have been to jail that hang out together on the weekends, and or during the week and talk about stuff. And I'm like, geez, guys that have been to prison. Now, there's probably levels of despair that I've reached. And I would say I'm pretty lucky because some of the things that I've done in my life, I could have ended up behind bars, but I haven't. I've got some lucky angel that looks out for me, you know, some grace of God. I saw a Vedic astrologer once, and he's like, in your chart, you're very troubled. But over here on this side of your chart, you have this like feminine or maternal energy that's always looking out for you. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm able to get away with so much shit. I could have been a complete fuck up that's ended up in prison, and I've tempted the gods, but I haven't. So I have been bereft of the societal accountability that one experiences when they go to jail or something like that. I could continue to fuck up and I wasn't getting to that low. And so I had to like realize that, hey, look, maybe that's not going to happen. And no, you don't want to end up there. But the internal despair for me was still so real that when someone mentioned that, hey, there's a bunch of guys that have been to prison that catch up on Tuesday and like they pray and they do stuff together, I was like, if there's anyone that knows the levels of despair that I've been to, it'll be that group. And I haven't joined that group yet. I'm still kind of, you know, tiptoeing my way into the whole experience of the church community. But yeah, it's probably an experience that I've had recently where I felt, hang on, you're not alone. Like, snap out of it, man. Like, other people have gone through stuff. There's these dudes over there that have been to jail and still show up for their communities and each other. Like, things aren't that bad. Come on, join in. Be okay with being who you are, you know.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that speaks so much to the incredible spectrum that human beings are capable of. Yeah, and again, I love how you're always pulling yourself out by the socks, Louis. You're like, no, socks. I'm very
Sorry.
specific about
Okay,
this.
not noose. Socks. Yeah,
Not
sure.
the news. Not the news. No. No, I mean, you feel yourself in some sort of despair and you feel yourself in a place that is a struggle and you're open to trying new things. Like, you know, staying and doing the same thing is just going to end up with the same results or worse. And so it's really, I don't know how to emphasize this enough because we see enough people in the world who live in those situations and don't do anything to get out of it. And at the end of the day, we have to be the ones to take action for that, you know? Like, I've, you know, been with friends who are severely depressed or have, you know, certain things that make them really uninclined to make changes in their lives. And it's really hard because you can be by their side, you can be the best possible version of a community or a friend. And if they choose not to do anything about it, then nothing will change in their lives. And that always gives me hope with you, Louis, is like, you are, whatever cycles you're going through in life, like, you're always looking up and out. And, you know, you might take some steps back and forth from that, but in the whole and at the end of the day, you're looking up and out and you're trying to find or make the rungs of the ladder out of where you are. And that's a really incredible thing. Like, that speaks a lot to your character. I guess on the church specifically as well, like, I don't know if you know this, but like, I used to be very, very Christian.
No, I didn't know this.
Like, I went to camp by choice. My family is not religious at all, so I was the black sheep for a while. And you know, I would go
Hang
to
on.
youth.
Hang on. How is that the black sheep? Isn't that like the white sheep? You know, like,
Yeah, no, I got mocked at the dinner table. My dad is a PhD scientist. My sister is, you know, now very much in the financial world. And they both sat at the dinner table and said to me, like, you're supposed to be smart, you know? Like, yeah, they told me you're supposed to be, well, look, this is what I believe.
that's why you're so full of character, Kat, because like you got roasted at dinner as a child for going to church.
Yeah.
That builds resilience and character.
And then I went to join the circus, so that shows them. Don't mock your children's choices, they will surprise you. But I made a choice to leave Christianity more because I'm lazy than anything else, if I'm really honest. I couldn't be bothered answering, and I probably could have if I'd spent the time and effort on it. But it's always been something that I really like appreciated and missed. Like, I have amazing friends from those groups. But also, even today, actually, a lot of my closest friends are Christian, just by coincidence, not ones that I met through church, but just a lot of my really good friends are Christian. So I think that also reflects on, you know, what a healthy community could do, is create those good friends as well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of beauty to be found there as well, even if that's something I no longer have chosen to be a part of myself.
Sure. I mean, you go through phases, right? We all go through phases in life where we need to create time and space for other things. But It sounds to me like it was a phase of your life that you're still grateful that you had, and there's still value and learnings from it. And that is what phases are for. Phases are for learning and finding value in things and taking them with us on our journey into that next phase or that next step that we go on. And, there are maybe people that come out of phases disgruntled for some reason, or they lose faith in themselves or an activity that they were involved in. And whether you have the motivation or maybe you feel too lazy to go to church, sounds like you took what you needed to away from it, And for me, again, what a great character building experience for you to remain disciplined and faithful in something that you found value in, even in the face of being mocked at home. By the people you loved.
Yeah, there were worse things in life that I was mocked for at that point in my life, I think. So it probably didn't hit me as much of as a character building experience. But yeah, in the same way, I'm thinking about what you've just told me, and something that gives me a lot of hope there is the context of this is I've had a lot of conversations both with females and males about the struggles that a lot of guys are having to find people to talk to. And I'm always looking out for a bit of hope that there are more and more men who are looking to be more in touch with their emotions, to be able to look after each other's emotions. And the example that you gave right there's a bunch of men who've been to jail and they're coming to church and they're talking to each other about what's going on in their lives. That gives me hope, that no matter what experience you're coming from, no matter what gender or any other aspect, we are all capable of trying to be a bit more open, of trying to listen, of trying to talk and communicate with other people and finding what we need. It may be statistically hard right now to find those people, especially ones that you actually gel with and want to talk to as well, as well as have some of the skills to, be able to have a good conversation with. That's still a challenge, but it gives me hope that exists out there. I keep meeting these people, Louis, that I'm like, damn, I wish you guys lived in the same city because I would love to introduce you guys and have you guys be friends, but I know how hard it is to start a friendship online.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, they're out there.
Yeah.
They're out.
And I appreciate that. And it's so nice to hear that you think of me and that you're wanting to spur me on this journey that I'm on. It means a lot, honestly. I think one of the other things that maybe I haven't, expressed is a bit of a change in my approach to authenticity. And, it's funny, right? I started this podcast with the aim of helping other people tell their stories. I enjoyed the things that people would say to me about these travel adventures that they'd been on. And I was like, I would love to record that and share that with other people. And right from the very first episode, I saw value in that. And I found that my very first guest shared the episode with a bunch of their friends. And I wasn't getting much feedback on it, but they were. All of their friends were saying, hey, that was amazing. I didn't know this about your life. There was people that were coming out of the woodwork that they hadn't spoken to in years or decades even, that would call them up or text them on Facebook and say, hey, listen, I just listened to your podcast after I saw you post it, and that was amazing. And for me, it was like, cool, it's having this great reach or this great connection that it's creating between people and their former friends and people that are coming back into their lives because they've heard this part of their story. For me, it was like, great, let's continue to do that, even if it's just that. And then I was given some advice around the same time that I sort of did the episode with you. I was given the advice that, hey, Louis, people are going to be coming back for you because you're the common denominator between all the episodes. And I was like, duh, that's so right. Why did I never think of that? And they're like, well, therefore, you need to talk more because people are getting to know you throughout this journey. Mm. And then there was this point where I was like, yeah, I need to talk more. And then suddenly I was like, got to the beginning of this year and I did this episode with Outback Mike. And Outback Mike is this Australian adventurer his name is Michael Atkinson. He's been on TV. He does let's say Bear Grylls style adventure where he'll use the natural type of elements to see if he can live or sustain himself whilst going on this rogue long walk, or the dugout canoe that he went on from Townsville up to Cape York. It's pretty cool, pretty wild. But before I did my episode with him, before we recorded, he was like, oh, hey, Louis, is there an about page about you that I can read so that I can get to know more about you? And I was like, oh, no one ever asks that. That's not true. But one person had asked in the past and I said no. And this time I was like, wow, it's the second time I've been asked, and it seemed a little bit disappointing for him not to have the opportunity to learn about me. So I said to him, Mike, I'm going to whip up an About You page. And in that About You page, I started off, hey, I'm Louis, like a children's book author, skateboarding instructor, podcaster. And then I was like, but I've also got drug and alcohol problems. And, and then I just laid it all on the line. And when I finished writing it, I was like, Jesus, that's brutal. Like that is honest. That is authentic. That is all sides of you, not just the pretty side, not just the nice, shiny side, And I felt this kind of urge to just put everything out on the table and be really authentic. Hey, listen, I'm a guy that's not perfect. I'm a guy that's fucked up a lot. I'm a guy that also has done some cool shit. And this is who you're going to be talking to when we record. And I was very anxious. I sent it to Mike, only Mike, and I was like, here's your About You page. And my gut feeling was that Mike was going to come back to me and say, hey, Louis, I'm not sure I want to record with you anymore. I just don't know if you're the kind of vibe and not because of anything Mike's conveyed in the past through stuff that I've seen of him, but through my own insecurities, by me feeling that if I opened up about the truth of my journey, that people would cancel me. And I was scared of that. Anyway, Mike reads it. Half hour later, he sends me a message back going, honest, I like it. And I was like, what? All of these preconceived insecurities and notions that I had about being cancelled and him not wanting to engage with me because of me coming clean about some dirt was all false. And from that point on, I felt like now, at the age of 39, I feel like I can finally be myself and open up and be accepted in the worst versions of myself. I don't have to hide that person anymore. And now I feel like I can be authentic about it. It's kind of like an unshackling. Suddenly, I feel like I'm released like the genie from Aladdin. 6,000 years will give you such a kick in the neck. I no longer feel like I'm cooped up in the bottle and that I have to be this shiny, glimmery example of like success or, like virtue for people. I finally come out and say, I fucked up. And people are like, we're cool with that. Yeah. And so the conversations that I've been having since I spoke with Outback Mike have been liberating for me to just be myself. And the reason I called the episode with Maddie, Rigby, Ryan and Nathan, This Is Not a Safe Space, is because in catching up with those guys, I realized that there is a lot of value in coming clean about who we really are, putting ourselves out there and opening up the potential to being roasted for it. Because it's in A, being honest, and B, knowing that we might be accountable to other people in our actions, that the real value in community lies. And it's really liberating when you can open up, be yourself, and have a laugh about yourself, and not sit in the back corner and hide parts of you that might be of value. They might be so valuable. Yeah. Anyway, that was a long monologue.
That's an incredible experience to go through and a really crucial one. And I always recognize that, I think I have lived a very privileged life. It's, there's been its own versions of challenges and whatnot, but at the end of the day, I don't feel that I have severe parental traumas or severe financial traumas or things. So I think I've had a very kind of lucky way that I've been brought up and a very lucky version of my world of opportunities.
You're a glass half full person, Kat. You are.
I think objectively it's true. I think there's a lot of people out there who have lived much, much harder lives than me. And it gives me so much respect for what they've been through and so much respect for the ones who are in whatever version of struggle that they're in. But the fact that they are doing it, and they're committed to the struggle. And so it's so cool hearing you talk about that, Louis. And I got to tell you, I think especially today, people are understanding more of what makes humanity diverse, interesting, and progressing forward. As we were saying before, it's not the people who live the easy lives, who have everything handed to them, who have every opportunity available to them. It's the people who are challenged and thrown obstacles in the face and smack bang in the head, who have to work through that shit and are living interesting lives. That's not to say that that's good. It's not to say that that's something that I would necessarily wish on everyone to have, but gosh, you're doing cool things. So so good on you for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, in this age of social media, right? This experimental age of social media, I'll call it, because it is an experiment. It was thrust upon our generation.
Yeah.
You know,
Without an understanding of what it was going to do to us.
yeah, at first you would say that the consequences have been pretty negative, but one of, I think, the long play positive consequences is that people are now starting to get sick of the highlight reel, right? And
Yep.
people are now potentially wanting to find common ground and be not just inspired all the time, but also a lot of the other time be able to feel like they can connect with someone in a way where they understand the struggle that they're going through potentially, right? That authenticity piece is an unintended consequence. Or maybe social media never had intentions. It just wanted to be a thing, and then we turned it into this weird highlight reel thing that we all tried to become, and then suddenly, we're all sick of it, and some of us are burnt out, and now we're all sort of going, hey, that person over there, that's real. I can actually get down with that.
Yeah.
But
You
yeah,
know Brene Brown, right? Or have heard of
yeah.
Brene Brown? This
Is that
feels
the?
so.
Is she the? What's her famous quote? I
I'm
am
terrible
enough.
with quotes, so I
I
wouldn't be
am
able to tell
enough.
you. Yeah, that could be it. That sounds
Yeah.
like a thing she'd say.
I am enough. Yeah.
Yeah, but like a lot of, I mean, honestly, the last time I read something by Brene Brown was close to 6 or 7 years ago. So I could be very out of date with her latest stuff. But some of the stuff that really stuck with me, like she's a researcher into shame and vulnerability. And I feel like her work kind of summarizes a general trend that is not just about social media, but about humanity as a whole, where we try to put up a brave face. We try to show that like everything in our life is fantastic and nothing is going wrong and we are on top of everything and we are high status, we have all our shit together. And then the reality is like when we are vulnerable with other people, there is so much respect for that. She talks about I think gosh, I can't remember which book it was. Someone had actually gifted it to me and was like, Kat, you need to read this, which might say something about my version of vulnerability at that point in my life. But it was basically, we assume that if we are vulnerable with people, they will see us as weak. They will see our failings and they will say, oh, you're not perfect. Like, why would I want to talk to you? Why would I want to be friends with you? Why would I want to associate with you? And the reality is completely different. She kept showing through experiments, through practice, that when people were vulnerable, other people respected that. And they said, oh my gosh, what a symbol of strength. What a symbol of bravery that this person was willing to open up about their failings. And I think it's a journey that we have to learn it explicitly. We have to be told explicitly it is not just okay to be vulnerable. It's actually very brave. It's a good thing. And it helps other people see and feel like they don't have to have it all together as well. The number of times I've seen that situation play out, I was in an industry, the one you met me in, that feels like you always have to have it together. Like in consulting, everyone is a high achiever. Everyone has done really well in university, is being paid a lot of money to help a lot of companies that are very important. So we need to sound like we have our shit together. And I've sat through so many conversations with people in that industry where you finally let the walls come down a bit and go, oof, I'm actually not sure I have this all together. I'm really stressed out. My relationship is struggling. I don't know if my boss likes me or not. I'm not sure if my client likes me or not. Like there are so many, I haven't exercised in 3 weeks. I forgot what it's like to eat a vegetable. Like there are so many little things in, in that struggle. And you go, oh my goodness, I'm not alone. And it feels so good to go, oh, I'm not alone. Like these are normal feelings to have. And we might be having different versions of them, but like, thank goodness we're not alone in this struggle that is human life.
Yeah, it reminds me of well, actually on a bit of a tangent. I was thinking, yeah, like I'm using social media as an example, and like it's great that you brought up Brené Brown and like this modern research it feels like that she's done, and it's all very related to modern times. But I was like, what happened? Like, who were we before social media? What are the things that we grasped onto before then that gave us the same feelings as what we're experiencing now, or that give us clues into that's who we've always been. That's what we've always been attracted to. And I think of that movie Forrest Gump. Have you ever seen Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
And right from when Forrest is a little kid, there's anomalies. He's got legs that aren't straight or they're crooked and he needs to wear knee braces and he's a little bit, his IQ is not at the same level as other kids. And I don't know, it's right from the get-go, and by the way, he's being raised by a single mother. It's right from the get-go in Forrest Gump, right from the very word go, when the director says action, that you come to really find something admirable about not only the mum, the situation, the child, the adversity, the pushing through, the overcoming the bullies, having to run and his braces falling off. And like 5 minutes into that movie, when you're watching little Forrest run away from the bullies and they're throwing rocks at him from this back of this truck, you're like, run, Forrest, run, just like Jenny. And as humans, we love an underdog. We love the adversity stories. They make us feel alive. They make us feel connected to humanity. And we've always been like that. And if you go even further back to books like, The Hobbit, which is one of my favorite books of all time, again, Bilbo is an underdog in a world where he's well in over his head and finds ways to utilize his character traits, his strengths, the things that he does have in this world to make the best of the situation that he has or that he finds himself in. And we all secretly deep down wish that we're born with some kind of innate virtues, whatever they might be, that help us get through this life. And they might not be strength or agility or flexibility, but if we need them, we can acquire them through perseverance and persistence and determination, or all of the same word, just said 3 different ways. Vocabulary.
With nuances.
Yeah.
Can you tell you were
Yeah. But yeah, like you remind me of that, Kat, like you do. That's why I always get such great joy of talking to you, because you put things in great context. And yeah, I really appreciate that about you. There's, I've got the book Ikigai there, and I wanted to actually read a tiny little passage from it for you. Is it okay if I get it?
Yeah, go for it. Since you actually read it, give me the highlights. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to, there's no spoiler alerts or copyright infringement possibilities here, but there's one little bit that I really loved. And one sec. Here we go. I found it. So, Okinawans live by the principle of Ichibara Shode, a local expression that means treat everyone like a brother, even if you've never met them before. How beautiful is that? And I think in order to do that, you need to come draped in humility. In order to do that, you can't show up with pretense, and the Okinawans are famous for living up to 100 and beyond. And this concept of Ichibara Chode, they attribute to, their longevity, to that concept of, hey, be humble. Your neighbor, your brother, your stranger across from you is going through the same struggles as you. And it's in the realizing of that you will find peace. So yeah, I think some of what we've talked about today has helped me to just reflect on that.
I love that so much. Like for me, that sparks so many other things that I really value around like having empathy for each other, and yeah, just treating each other like human beings who are going to be flawed sometimes and like cannot be held to a perfect standard, but are also capable of doing wonderful things and growing in different ways, and like can surprise us in the best ways possible. And just like leaving room for people to surprise us is such a fun thing as well. I really love that quote. And I'm going to go back on a different tangent as well, because you brought up Ikigai, which makes me think of the purpose of life. But like a lot of what we've been talking about today just makes me sit on the idea that like we as human beings, we're kind of constantly searching for purpose and challenge it, like to give us that purpose and satisfaction, and you call it kind of accountability and discipline, but like that is a lot of where our satisfaction comes from. Like I probably mentioned to you last time as well, like Laurie Santos, who runs the Happiness Lab, she talks about like satisfaction is not happiness, but we need like we're really gunning for satisfaction in our life, and satisfaction can be working on really hard things that make you hit your head against the wall, but at the end of the day it gives you satisfaction. It takes a lot of time to do that, and you are satisfied by the fact that you're putting that effort into it. And like the reason I kind of bring this up now is because like I think it's so clear that we all need that in our lives, because you look at people who seem to have everything that they could possibly want. Like I could talk about celebrities as examples, but like even in my own life in the last year, I think the last year I've had the most wonderful experience where like I had the financial savings to not stress about work. I was training in something that I really was passionate about and loved. I was surrounded by wonderful people. I lived a great life in Colombia that I can afford. Like I can afford to eat well, and I can afford to go out, and I can afford to do these great things and just truly enjoy my life. I was in nature. Right now I have this really cool opportunity to be in Costa Rican nature. And even despite the fact that everything in my life was going so wonderfully, my brain was still creating like challenges for me to deal with. You know, we haven't talked about it, but I spent a good chunk of last year also trying to figure out like my view on romance and like whether that is something that I truly value in my life and how I would take steps around that in my life as well. There were things that I need to grow and change there. But I'm like, if I was working right now, I wouldn't be thinking about any of this. I would have other challenges to face. But at a time in my life when everything seems to be going super, super well and smoothly and easily, my brain is like, no, no, we need to throw some challenge in here. You know, you need to be working on something interesting and meaningful and that requires some level of accountability and discipline to work through this. So yeah, I think that's part of, I guess, my version of what I think the meaning of life is. Like we're setting ourselves our own challenges for growth, the things that we know if we reach those things, we will be satisfied in them. Not necessarily happy, but satisfied by them. So,
Mm,
all right,
yeah.
thanks for my TED talk.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, speaking of relationships, I feel like, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. You know, like sometimes it was like beating my head up against a wall. But, you know, for me, the satisfaction was in being able to appreciate the imperfection of the situation, the other person, and push through and still love them. So yeah, I can totally relate to that. Like it wasn't happiness a lot of the time, but there was definitely self-development that was occurring in that moment that I could reflect on as positive, you know, and together development too, you know, to be able to look at someone and go, God, I love them, at a moment where you can tell that they're being, you know, not the best version of themselves. You know, for me, that was like, yeah, I felt like I leveled up through not happiness, but the struggle, you know, of, yeah, disarming the need for perfection. But yeah, I mean, romantic relationship is probably something that has come into your thoughts because, yeah, you found yourself with this extra time, and that it's another way in which we find connection in life. And that's another level. It's over there. There's many ways that we can find connection. And one of them is through romance, you know, and if it goes unexplored, then like you were saying before about indulgence, you haven't lived until you've experienced certain parts of life. And I think romance is one of those parts. To cheesily sit across from each other at a candlelit table and link arms and cross arms and like drink, you know, French
You
champagne
get
or
the
whatever it might be.
experience 'cause
What's that?
that's part of my romantic experience to date.
Oh, well, you're in Latin America, Kat. Come on, like seriously, if you haven't experienced like, you know, cheesy, textbook romance in Latin America, where will you experience it? Don't expect to find it back here in Australia. Just saying.
It's good to know. No, Louis, there's probably lots of things I'm doing wrong out here. So
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say that, but at the same time, like, yeah, it's an interesting thing to explore. We can get swept away in romance as well, and so it's been something I've been avoiding to get myself involved in another romantic situation because the last one was really intense and there were so many learnings that I'm still getting from it, and there's still a lot of pain associated with it for me, and I'm not ready. It's been nearly 2 years, but some things that, you know, were confusing to me at the time are now starting to become clear. And so I think there's great value in taking time to process the learnings from the past. And you said that you went through a breakup like 6-7 years ago or something like that, and you ended up very heartbroken from it. And this journey of discovering yourself that you've been on, you know, to go from a relatively coordinationally challenged person to being someone that others describe as as a dancer. This is a part of your life that you felt you needed to explore. This is a track that you felt you needed to go down to find the depths of yourself in order to potentially set yourself up for whatever the next phase of your life looks like, including romance, including like being a newer, more self-aware version of yourself in your next romantic venture potentially.
Yeah. I I would tie that together in a different way. But it's funny, I think we're both maybe well, I'm not avoiding romance now, but I have been avoiding it for quite a long time, but for a different reason. But that same heartbreak that you referred to was one that really made me reevaluate what I prioritized in my life and made me realize that like work and productivity is not the be all and end all. And I think if not for that relationship falling apart, I wouldn't have made many of the changes and decisions that I've made since. So it has, I think, made my life a lot better in the fallout, although it was a hard lesson to learn at the time. And like my bigger issue now, maybe I've gone too far in the community lens because I am really struggling to set a reasonable bar for someone that I would want to be romantically involved in with because I have such incredible friends. I have such an incredible community. I'm like, if these people satisfy me so much, and anything that I might need on a physical element, I think I can take care of myself. So what do I really need except for hugs? But even with hugs, I'm like, I've got friends who are very good huggers, you know? I can cuddle with my girlfriends, like we and my guy friends as well. I'm like, I have such a wonderful community that really provides for all of my needs. And so if I think about letting one person in as a romantic interest, I'm like, you got to compete with all of them. You got to compete with me and you've got to compete with all of my friends. And that is a ridiculously high bar to set. So it's one that I'm learning to sort of, I'm learning to reset. Like if that's something that I want to pursue, I'm learning that I need to, not lower the bar in an unreasonable way, but I need to lower the bar to like a human level.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because as you were talking before, I was like, damn, you would set an awfully high bar for whoever would come into your life.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's something to reflect on in that, I think. And it could be that that might be the reason to avoid it in itself. You go, well, I set too high a bar, so let's just ditch the idea of it. I think, yeah, you do end up learning a lot about yourself in those situations that you otherwise wouldn't. And relationship, like togetherness, is a pathway in life that comes with its own challenges and levels of fulfillment that you can't get in other areas. You can't get from community. And I often think back to the growth that I felt like I was experiencing being with someone that, you know, I went to bed with every night and would wake up next to every morning and be locked in an apartment with during lockdowns and stuff. And, you know, see the way that they go about things and see their imperfections and learn about my own flaws, I suppose. And some of the places that I reached during that process, I never would have been able to reach on my own, or it would have been very hard for me to reach on my own. The vulnerability, the self-awareness, the ability to work as a team on life challenges that involve life goals like saving and owning a dog. You know, these things, there's great value in those things as well. So yeah, I do appreciate that despite the other person not meeting certain expectations that we have, that's not their job to meet our expectations. They don't have a job, you know. It's our job to learn how to coexist with someone else through very challenging circumstances and how to be able to be a teammate for someone. Like, which I
Yeah.
think is the great. I mean, every month, it would be like, I'm on my period now, hot water bottles and cups of tea, please. And I'd be like, yeah, you know, like she wanted me to take care of her in that time. And I had to learn how to serve, you know, and I had to learn what it was like to serve someone else that I cared about and cared about me. And I know who I knew would be there for me when I needed it. And, you know, a period is a very simple example of like, okay, well, it happens every month. So I'm getting geared up for it's going to happen again. And it's a great way of teaching me, hey, listen, you can't be out there, you know, working on podcasts all the time. You have a responsibility to someone here, you know, who adds a lot of value to your life that needs your help right now by, you know, making sure that they have their warm, fluffy socks on and they've got their favorite Netflix series ready, queued up, and they have their hot water bottle and their cup of tea. You know, taking care of someone else in that kind of deep, personal way is a great experience.
Definitely. Like what you're saying sparks two very tangential thoughts for me. The first is that there's been an undercurrent these last well, I don't know. I've only been alive for 31 years, so maybe it was before as well, but I feel like there's this undercurrent but it should be easy, you know? Like when you find that person, it'll just click, it'll be easy. And it's like, No, the reality is, if you are dealing with any other human being in the world, things are not always easy. And to me, like, I think platonic love as well as romantic love is a real demonstration of being there through all of the things, you know, like I've been with my friends to the hospital. My romantic partner has been to the hospital with me, like, you know, but like those are the kinds of things that you're like, no one wants to do that, but you do it because you're like, I want to support them, I want to be there for them. I had a friend's mom telling me about her situation. She's been with a long-term partner for somewhere around a decade, but he had a stroke a number of years ago, and he doesn't speak now, he doesn't move, but she takes care of him. And she's like, this is not what I had imagined when I thought I found my partner that I was going to be with, but I choose to be here. I've had a different conversation with a friend about loyalty in her life looking like a lot of relationship counseling, even when you're not sure if that's the situation that you want to be in, but you push through it because there's a commitment there. And I think it's so much easier for me to commit to that on a platonic level, and I'm learning to respect that on a romantic level as well. But there's just so much of us going, but it should be easy, but it should just work. And the thing is, we're dealing with other people, and it's just not always that easy. And you know, we don't know the solution to everything, and there is so much to learn on that front. I think both romantically and platonically.
Yeah. Well, we're really leaving no stone unturned here, are we? In
Should we talk
in
about
this
any other
episode.
facets of the meaning of life? We've covered some
Yeah.
religion
Oh,
and some
totally. Totally. I mean, like
relation.
our last two conversations, you've brought up sapiens and now ikigai. So, you know, like we make space for that. But I still owe you a trip to Bogota.
I'll be around for at least another year and a half by the latest chats with my company. So,
It's happening later than what I would have hoped, but as we've discussed, there have been certain challenges that needed to be overcome.
and such is life. There is no need to rush on it.
But, you know, it is definitely a friendship that I value a lot. And it's nice to have you as part of this project that I'm working on, because we're able to do it, you know, from wherever you are. And right now you're in Costa Rica. But I think this year is really about coming into myself as someone that's okay to open up and be vulnerable about their flaws and their struggles and their sins, I suppose, for lack of a better word, to put it just very concisely. And you make me feel like I'm okay to do that, and that like this is a safe space. And that's the beauty in the full spectrum, which you called it, of life, is that sometimes we need to be able to put ourselves in a space where we're going to be roasted, you know, for
Yeah, look, if I was funnier, by the way, I would totally roast you on these things. I'm just not that funny.
I think you are funny, but I'm glad you're not, because yeah, for me I can get that elsewhere, and with you it's honestly, it's I don't know of many people that could sit through some of the stuff that I've said and still look at me with the smile that you're looking at me with. You know, that make me feel okay for being who I am, and more than okay. Like the way that you smile at me is always sort of you know, warmed my heart a little. Yeah, and I probably could put you up in that same echelon of friends as, you know, the one in Canberra and the one in Byron Bay, and now my one in Costa Rica or Bogota, wherever you end up being. But yeah, it's nice to have that. It's nice to have people in our lives like that. And I hope that you get value out of this as well, Kat. That's what I really hope. You know, when I press stop on the recording, it's like, damn, I really hope Kat enjoyed that. You know?
There's a look. This is me sending you the biggest hug that I can, because I mean, it's not the same as a physical one, but if you're getting a hug from my words, you know, that's all I could wish for. I make the time, Louis, because I want to, not because I have to. So yeah, but this is the best version of a hug I can send you right now.
Oh, that means a lot. It means a lot. But also, you know, hopefully that you're feeling the hug back, and that it sounds like you've got a lot of really great people in your life. But yeah, hopefully this has given you opportunity to get to a layer of reflection that maybe you don't get to explore elsewhere. Who knows? But I know our audience loved our last episode, and hopefully they love this episode as much as the last one.
Hopefully, yeah, hugs all around. Not what we spend most of our time talking about, but yeah, hopefully they all get inspired to ask for a hug too.
Yeah. Yeah. Hug each other more, people. That is That's, yeah, if you missed the last hour and a half, then, just hug each other more.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe ask for permission if it's a total stranger, but otherwise,
Yeah,
hug.
don't do. I can't believe you advised me to go to a strip club and not tell them I was there. Or was it no? It was it's a pole
Hold on,
dancing.
hold on. Don't don't tell the story the wrong way. Pole dancing's
Sorry,
nuts.
sorry. Why I connect the two, I'm not sure. Might have something to do with the last 8 months, maybe. I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I got some perspectives to rewrite.
yeah. But hey, you've been so good, and yeah, thanks so much for being back here with me again, and hopefully this is something we can continue every once in a while. But
Yeah,
yeah,
the next chat.
yeah, for now, thank you. Thank our audience. And you can find this episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and give us a like. You know what? Review, people. Reviews. I need some stars, people. And so, yeah, please do. But, Kat, thank you so much for coming. And I don't want to say goodbye.
We'll be chatting. We'll be chatting for sure. Thanks, Louie.